Welcome to my channel, Truth Drama Stories. My name is Daniel Hayes, and today I am going to tell you a story that still feels like a wound that never fully closed. This story is about a son whose own parents told every employer that he was a thief. They tried to destroy his future before it even began. But they did not know that someone else had already seen the truth. Someone who had already prepared for the moment when everything would fall apart. This story is about betrayal. It is about exhaustion. And it is about the quiet strength of one person who refused to let lies become the final truth. It began on a cold Monday morning. I remember the smell of burnt coffee filling my tiny apartment. The heater was broken again. The air felt heavy and sharp in my lungs. I had been awake since 4 a.m., staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint. I had a job interview at 9. This one mattered. I had lost 3 jobs in the past 6 months. Each time, it happened the same way. First, they smiled. Then they praised my work. Then something changed. They stopped looking me in the eye. And a few days later, they fired me. No explanation. No warning. Just silence. I stood in front of the mirror. My reflection looked older than 24. My eyes were hollow. My shoulders were tense. I adjusted my tie with shaking hands. "You can do this," I whispered. But my voice did not believe it. The office building stood tall and clean. Glass walls reflected the gray sky. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked stable. Everything I was not. I walked inside. The receptionist smiled politely. "Name?" she asked. "Daniel Hayes." She typed something. Her smile froze for a second. It was small. Almost invisible. But I saw it. She looked up again. "They'll call you shortly." I sat down. My hands rested on my knees. My fingers would not stop moving. Minutes passed slowly. Every second felt heavier. Then a tall man in a navy suit walked toward me. "Daniel?" "Yes," I stood quickly. "I'm Mr. Whitmore." His handshake was firm. His smile was warm. Real. "Come with me." His office smelled like leather and fresh paper. Sunlight poured through the window behind him. Everything felt calm. We talked for 30 minutes. He asked about my experience. He asked about my goals. He nodded when I spoke. He smiled often. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. "I like you, Daniel," he said. "You seem honest. Hardworking." My chest tightened. Honest. That word meant everything to me. "I am," I said quietly. He nodded again. "We'll call you tomorrow." Hope is a dangerous thing. It makes you believe in a future that may never come. I walked home that day with lighter steps. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to imagine stability. A steady paycheck. Food in the fridge. Sleep without fear. That night, my phone rang. My heart raced. I answered immediately. "Hello." Silence. Then Mr. Whitmore's voice. His tone was different now. Cold. Flat. "Daniel," he said slowly. "I need to ask you something." My stomach dropped. "Of course." There was a pause. "Why didn't you tell me about your history?" My mind went blank. "What history?" Another pause. Longer this time. Then he said it. "About the theft." The word hit like a hammer. Theft. My voice cracked. "I've never stolen anything." He sighed. "I received a call." My hands started shaking. "From who?" He hesitated. Then he answered. "Your father." The room around me disappeared. My father. Richard Hayes. I had not spoken to him in over a year. Mr. Whitmore continued. "He said he wanted to warn us. He said you had stolen money before. He said we should be careful." My chest felt tight. I could not breathe. "That's not true," I whispered. Mr. Whitmore did not respond immediately. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "But we can't take risks." The call ended. Just like that. I stood frozen in the middle of my apartment. The phone slipped from my hand. It hit the floor with a dull sound. I stared at nothing. I felt something break inside me. Not loudly. Not suddenly. Quietly. Like glass cracking under pressure. I sank onto the floor. My back pressed against the cold wall. My hands covered my face. Why? Why would he do that? My father was not a kind man. But this was something else. This was destruction. Memories flooded back. His cold eyes at the dinner table. His silence when I spoke. His disappointment that never needed words. "You are weak," he used to say. "You will fail." I always thought he was wrong. But now, he was making sure it became true. I did not sleep that night. I sat in darkness, watching the shadows move across the walls, listening to my own breathing. Around 3 a.m., I made a decision. I needed answers. The next morning, I drove to the house I once called home. Nothing had changed. The same white walls, the same perfect lawn, the same lifeless windows. I stood at the door for a long time. My hand hovered over the bell. I almost left, but I didn't. I rang it. Footsteps approached slowly. The door opened. My mother stood there. Elaine Hayes. Her face showed no surprise. She simply looked at me. "Daniel," she said calmly. Not warmly. Not coldly. Just empty. "Why?" I asked immediately. She tilted her head slightly. "I don't know what you mean." My fists clenched. "You called my employer." She said nothing. "You told them I was a thief." Silence filled the space between us. Then she spoke. "We told them the truth." The truth. The word burned. I never stole anything. Her expression did not change. They deserved to know the risk. Risk. That was what I was to them. A risk. "I'm your son," I said, my voice shaking. She stared at me without emotion. "You made your choices." I felt anger rise inside me. "What choices?" She did not answer. Instead, she said something else. "You should leave." That hurt more than anything. Not anger. Not yelling. Just dismissal. Like I was nothing. Behind her, I saw my father sitting in the living room, watching television. Calm. Relaxed. Like none of this mattered. Like I did not matter. He looked at me briefly. Then he looked away. That was worse than hate. That was indifference. I turned and walked away. My legs felt weak. My vision blurred. My chest felt hollow. I drove without direction. Without purpose. Eventually, I stopped in front of the only place that ever felt safe. My grandmother's house. Margaret Hayes. She was the only person who ever looked at me with warmth. She opened the door before I could knock. Like she had been waiting. "Daniel," she said softly. Her voice carried concern. I stepped inside. The house smelled like tea and old books. It smelled like peace. She looked at my face carefully. "They did something, didn't they?" I could not speak. I simply nodded. She guided me to a chair. "Tell me." My voice broke as I explained everything. The jobs. The calls. The lies. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she reached out and held my hand. Her grip was firm. Stronger than I expected. "I was afraid of this," she said quietly. I looked at her. "You knew?" She nodded slowly. "I know your parents." There was sadness in her eyes. But there was something else too. Resolve. She stood up and walked to the hallway. "Wait here," she said. I watched as she disappeared into another room. I heard the sound of a drawer opening. Paper moving. Something heavy being lifted. She returned holding a thick black binder. She placed it on the table in front of me. Dust rose into the air. I stared at it. "What is this?" She rested her hand on top of it. Her expression was calm. Serious. "This," she said, "is the truth." My heart began to beat faster. I looked at the binder. I did not know it yet. But everything was about to change. My hands hovered over the binder. It looked ordinary. Just black leather. Slightly worn at the edges. But something about it felt heavy. Not in weight. In meaning. My grandmother sat across from me. Her eyes stayed on my face. She watched me carefully. "Open it," she said softly. My fingers trembled as I lifted the cover. The first page held a photograph. It was me. I was 8 years old. Sitting on the living room floor. Smiling. Holding a small red toy car. I frowned. "I don't understand." She leaned forward slightly. "Keep going." I turned the page. There was a printed email. The sender's name made my stomach twist. Richard Hayes. My father. The date was from 2 years ago. My eyes scanned the words slowly. "To whom it may concern, I regret to inform you that my son, Daniel Hayes, has a history of dishonesty. He has stolen money from family members in the past. I recommend caution before trusting him in any financial position. My breath stopped. The words blurred. I never. My voice faded. I know, my grandmother said gently. I turned another page. Another email. Different company. Same message. Another page. Another company. Same lie. Over and over again. Each page was proof. Each page was a weapon. Each page was used against me without my knowledge. My chest tightened. They planned this, I whispered. She nodded slowly. Yes. I felt cold. Not outside. Inside. Like something had frozen in my chest. Why would they do this? I asked. She hesitated. Her fingers tightened around her teacup. Because they wanted control. I looked at her. They never believed you deserved independence, she continued. They believed you would fail. And when you didn't fail on your own, they decided to help it happen. Her words landed slowly. Painfully. I stared at the binder. Every lost job. Every rejection. Every confused employer. It wasn't coincidence. It was sabotage. I turned another page. This time it was not an email. It was a bank statement. My name was on it. But it wasn't my account. There was an account opened in your name, she said. My heart raced. I never opened this. I know. I looked at the transactions. Money had been withdrawn. Small amounts. Over time. It looked deliberate. Careful. Designed to create a pattern. To make it believable. They were building evidence, I said. The realization hit like a wave. My grandmother nodded. They wanted a story. Something they could show others. Something that made their lives feel real. My hands clenched. Anger burned through me. They destroyed my life. She leaned forward. No, she said firmly. They tried to. Her voice was stronger now. But they failed at one thing. I looked at her. They underestimated me, she said quietly. She placed another document in front of me. It was a letter. From a lawyer. Dated 6 months ago. I started preparing when I first suspected, she explained. My eyes widened. You believed me? She looked at me with certainty. I always believed you. Those words broke something inside me. Not in pain. In relief. For so long I felt alone. Like the world had turned against me. But she had been watching. She had been protecting me. Without telling me. Without asking for anything. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. She sighed. Because I needed proof. Not feelings. Proof. She tapped the binder. This is proof. Silence filled the room. The clock on the wall ticked slowly. Each second felt different now. Not heavy. Clear. For the first time, I understood. I was not crazy. I was not weak. I was betrayed. Carefully. Deliberately. I turned another page. There were phone records. Dates. Times. Numbers. Highlighted. These are the calls your father made, she said. I stared at the list. Employer after employer. Opportunity after opportunity. Destroyed with a single phone call. My hands stopped shaking. Something else replaced the pain. Clarity. They wanted me to come back, I said slowly. She nodded. Yes. To depend on them. Yes. To fail. Yes. The truth was ugly. But it was clean. No confusion. No doubt. Just facts. I leaned back in the chair. My breathing slowed. They don't see me as a person, I said. She shook her head. They see you as something they own. The words sat heavy in the air. Owned. Controlled. Managed. Not loved. Never loved. I closed the binder slowly. My reflection stared back at me from the dark surface. For the first time in months, I did not see weakness. I saw something else. Awareness. They thought I would never find out, I said. My grandmother's lips curved slightly. They forgot one thing. What? She smiled gently. You're not alone. Those words filled the empty space inside me. Strength returned slowly. Like warmth after a long winter. What do I do now? I asked. She did not hesitate. You stop running. Her voice was calm. You stop apologizing for something you didn't do. She placed her hand over mine. and you take your life back. Fear still existed, but it was smaller now. Controlled. Manageable. I looked at the binder again. It was no longer something mysterious. It was a weapon. Not for destruction. For truth. I'm scared, I admitted. She nodded. That's normal. She paused. But fear does not mean weakness. Her eyes held mine. It means you understand the stakes. I took a deep breath. The air felt different. Cleaner. Like the beginning of something new. What if they try again? I asked. Her expression hardened slightly. They will. Her honesty surprised me. But this time, she continued, you'll be ready. Ready. The word echoed in my mind. For so long, I had been reacting. Surviving. Enduring. Now, I could prepare. Now, I could act. She pushed the binder toward me. This belongs to you. I hesitated. It felt heavy. In my hands. Not physically. Emotionally. This binder held pain. But it also held power. Proof of lies. Proof of truth. Proof that I was never what they said I was. I held it tightly. And for the first time in months, I felt something I thought I had lost forever. Control. I drove home with the binder resting on the passenger seat. I kept glancing at it at every red light. It no longer felt like a secret. It felt like armor. The city lights blurred past the windshield. My thoughts were clear for the first time in months. I was not the problem. I was the target. That realization changed everything. When I reached my apartment, I locked the door carefully. I closed the curtains. I sat at the small kitchen table and opened the binder again. This time, I did not shake. I read every page slowly. Every email. Every call log. Every bank record. There were notes written in my grandmother's handwriting. Dates circled in red. Names underlined. Observations in the margins. She had been building a case. Not out of anger. Out of patience. Around midnight, I found something I had missed before. A certified mail receipt. Sent to my father. 3 months ago. I flipped the page. There it was. A formal notice from the lawyer. It warned him about defamation. It demanded he stop contacting employers. It stated that further action would result in legal consequences. My heart pounded. He ignored it, I whispered to myself. There were more call records after that date. He did not stop. He escalated. I leaned back in the chair and closed my eyes. For a moment, everything was silent. I felt the weight of the past few years pressing against me. The chaos. The exhaustion. The humiliation. Every interview where I smiled while knowing something invisible was working against me. Every time I questioned myself. Maybe I wasn't good enough. Maybe I was failing on my own. That doubt had almost destroyed me. I opened my eyes. No more doubt. The next morning, I called the lawyer whose name was on the letter. His name was Thomas Reed. His voice was calm and steady when he answered. I've been expecting your call, Daniel, he said. That surprised me. You have. Your grandmother told me she would give you the binder. When the time was right, I swallowed. It's time. We scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. When I entered his office, I felt different than I had at Mr. Whitmore's building days earlier. I was still nervous. But I was not ashamed. Thomas Reed was a tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes. He shook my hand firmly. Sit down, he said. Let's review everything together. I placed the binder on his desk. He opened it with familiarity. I gathered most of this evidence over the past year, he explained. Your grandmother suspected something when you lost your second job. I stared at the pages. Why didn't she tell me then? Because accusations without proof are dangerous, he replied. Your father is careful. He speaks in ways that sound concerned, not malicious. That sounded exactly like him. Controlled. Calm. Convincing. Thomas leaned forward. Daniel, what they did is serious. This is defamation. It is intentional interference with employment. And the bank account opened in your name could involve fraud. The words felt heavy. Legal terms. Real consequences. This isn't just family drama, he continued. This is a calculated attempt to damage your reputation. I felt anger rise again. But it was steady now. Focused. What happens next? I asked. He closed the binder slowly. We confront them. The word sent a chill through me. Confront. I imagined my father's cold stare, my mother's empty expression. Fear tried to creep back in, but it did not control me this time. Thomas continued, "We will send a final legal notice. We will also notify the companies they contacted. We will provide evidence that their claims are false." I nodded slowly. "And if they deny everything?" He gave a small, confident smile. "They won't be able to." He tapped the call logs. "We have records." He tapped the bank documents. "We have forensic review requests ready." He tapped the emails. "We have digital copies traced to their devices." I stared at him. "You planned all this?" He shook his head slightly. "Your grandmother did." A quiet pride filled my chest. She had seen what I could not. She had prepared for a war I did not know I was fighting. Thomas looked directly at me. "But this will not be easy." I held his gaze. "I know." He paused. "Are you ready to move forward?" There it was. The moment of choice. For years, I had endured silently. I had hoped things would fix themselves. I had tried to be patient. That patience almost ruined me. Now I had proof. Now I had support. Now I had truth. "Yes," I said firmly. Something shifted inside me when I said it. Not anger. Not revenge. Strength. Over the next few days, everything moved quickly. Formal notices were sent. Employers received clarification letters with documented evidence. The fraudulent bank account was flagged for investigation. I felt exposed, but also empowered. Then, 3 days later, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Richard Hayes. I stared at it. For a long moment, I did not move. Then I answered. "Daniel," his voice was calm as always. "What is this nonsense?" I said nothing. "I received a letter from some lawyer," he continued. "Are you trying to threaten your own family?" Family. The word sounded hollow. "You threatened my future," I replied quietly. A pause. Then a soft scoff. "You're overreacting." I felt something steady in my chest. "No," I said. "I'm responding." Silence filled the line. Then his tone shifted slightly. "You're making a mistake." I almost laughed. For years, I believed that. Now I saw clearly. "No," I said again. "You did." There was anger in his breathing now. Sharp. Controlled. "You wouldn't survive without us," he said. That sentence. That was the truth of what he believed. I felt something break inside me again. But this time, it was not weakness. It was the last thread of fear. "I already have," I replied. I ended the call. My hand trembled slightly after I hung up. But I did not regret it. For the first time, I had not defended myself emotionally. I had stood firm. That evening, I returned to my grandmother's house. She was sitting by the window, reading. She looked up when I entered. "He called," I said. She nodded. "I expected that." I sat across from her. "I told him I'm done being afraid." A gentle smile appeared on her face. "Good." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're stronger than they ever allowed you to believe." I thought about that. For years, their voices had shaped my self-image. Weak. Careless. Risky. Now those words felt foreign. "They tried to write my story," I said quietly. She nodded. "But they forgot something." "What?" "You get the final page." Her words stayed with me long after I left. That night, as I lay in bed, I did not stare at the ceiling in fear. I stared at it with purpose. The chaos had defined the beginning. The betrayal had revealed the truth. Now came the final step. Not revenge. Justice. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a week, the bank confirmed it. The account opened in my name had been created from my parents' home address. The IP records matched their internet connection. The signature on the documents was forged. There was no misunderstanding anymore. There was no confusion. There was only proof. Thomas Reed called me into his office again. His expression was calm, but there was something firm behind it. "They've hired an attorney," he said. I nodded. I had expected that. They're claiming it was a misunderstanding. They say they were only trying to protect employers from potential loss. I almost smiled at that. Protect. That word again. "They created the loss," I replied. Thomas nodded. Exactly. He placed a new document in front of me. A settlement proposal. They want this to go away quietly, he explained. They're willing to sign a formal retraction. They will issue written apologies to every employer they contacted. They will provide financial compensation for lost wages. I stared at the paper. A year ago, I would have felt relief immediately. Now, I felt something else. Careful thought. And the fraud? I asked. The bank is still reviewing potential charges, Thomas said. But your cooperation matters. You can choose how far this goes. Choice. For so long, I had none. Now I did. I left his office and drove to my grandmother's house again. The sun was setting. The sky was orange and gold. The air felt lighter. She was in the kitchen, making tea. They offered a settlement, I said. She studied my face carefully. And what do you want? She asked. Not what should I do. What do you want? I sat down slowly. I don't want revenge, I said after a long pause. She nodded. I want my name back. Her eyes softened. Then make that the condition. The next meeting was quiet and controlled. My parents sat across the table from me. For the first time, they did not look confident. My father's jaw was tight. My mother's hands were folded neatly in her lap. But her fingers were trembling. Thomas spoke calmly, outlining the evidence. The emails. The call logs. The bank fraud. No raised voices. No drama. Just facts. My father finally looked at me. You've gone too far, he said. I met his eyes without flinching. No, I replied. You did. There was a long silence. I could see something in his face I had never seen before. Not anger. Uncertainty. The settlement terms were read aloud. A full written retraction sent to every employer. A formal statement admitting the claims were false. Financial repayment for documented lost wages. And one more condition. I spoke it myself. You will never contact my employers again. My voice was steady. You will never speak about my character to anyone professionally. My mother finally spoke. We were only trying to guide you. Guide. I shook my head slowly. Guidance doesn't destroy someone's future. The room went quiet again. After several minutes, their attorney leaned toward them and whispered something. My father's shoulders lowered slightly. He signed first. Then my mother. Just like that, the illusion of control they held over me ended with the scratch of a pen. But the moment did not feel victorious. It felt final. Outside the building, I stood still for a long time. The air felt different against my skin. Lighter. I felt something shift inside me again. Not pain. Not anger. Release. A week later, the letters began to arrive. Employers responded with apologies. Some expressed shock. A few even offered interviews again. One message stood out. It was from Mr. Whitmore. Daniel, we are deeply sorry. We were misled. If you are still interested, the position remains open. I read the email twice. My hands did not shake this time. I scheduled the interview. When I walked into that same office building again, everything felt familiar. The glass walls. The polished floors. The quiet hum of professionalism. But I was not the same person who had walked in before. Mr. Whitmore stood when I entered his office. I owe you an apology, he said sincerely. You made a decision based on what you were told, I replied calmly. Now you know the truth. He nodded. Yes, I do. The interview was shorter this time. More direct. Less tension. At the end, he extended his hand. Welcome aboard, Daniel. This time, when I shook his hand, I felt steady. Certain. That night, I went to my grandmother's house with the news. She was sitting in her usual chair by the window. I got the job, I said. Her smile spread slowly, gently. I knew you would. I sat beside her. You saved me, I whispered. She shook her head softly. No. She looked at me with pride. I reminded you who you are. There was a quiet pause between us. Peaceful. The chaos was over. The betrayal had been exposed. The truth had been documented. And empowerment had come, not through anger, but through preparation. Through a binder filled with patience and evidence. Through one person who believed in me when others tried to erase me. Months passed. Work became steady. My confidence grew naturally. Not forced. Not fragile. One evening, I received a final letter from the bank. They had decided not to pursue criminal charges based on the civil resolution and restitution. It was done. Completely done. I held that letter for a long time. I did not feel triumph. I felt closure. My parents never contacted me again. And for the first time in my life, their silence did not feel heavy. It felt freeing. I learned something through all of this. Sometimes betrayal does not come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people who raised you. Sometimes the people who should protect your name are the ones trying to stain it. But here is the truth. Lies need repetition to survive. Truth only needs evidence. And patience. If you are listening to this and you feel trapped by someone else's narrative about you, remember this. You are not the story they tell about you. You are the story you prove. My name is Daniel Hayes. And this was the chapter where I stopped letting others write my future. Thank you for listening. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of your own strength, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Truth Drama Stories. I'll see you in the next story.